Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. We are chatting about Canada's Drag Race Season 5, Episode 4. This episode is the Fast Fashion Challenge, and I'm very excited because that means that we're getting 2 sewing challenges this season because we know that there is a design something for Brooke later on. So I'm very excited that this came this early. This is an interesting challenge that I think should honestly be a staple in a lot of the Drag Race seasons, or at least varied through them. Don't get me wrong, I love an unconventional sewing challenge, but seeing something that has more of a direct prompt that's actually related to drag is cool to me. I think the unconventional challenges sometimes lend themselves to a little more embarrassment of the contestants than I think is acceptable for Drag Race, especially this far in. The early seasons of the show, I think, was all about trying to get clicks and views, where I think now, with as saturated as Drag Race is, it should be about talent. It should be about showcasing the people you've cast, about showing their abilities, about celebrating their drag and their art rather than trying to embarrass them for quick views, like what Drag Race Thailand Season 3 is doing. The idea of this entire challenge is to make something that is wearable and sellable. What is wearable fashion? Because that is something that I think a lot of people don't quite understand. There's wearable fashion and there's fashion that is meant to be seen once, like couture, right? Where you see it on a red carpet and it'll never be worn again because it's just not functional as a garment. You can't really walk in it, you can't perform in it, and where are you gonna go in it? Where something that's wearable is something you can wear again and again and again. Examples like a bodysuit or a swimsuit or a frilly dress. Something with a long cape or one of those big drag queen ruffle dresses that they take off and reveal into a sparkly mermaid skirt. So the idea of this challenge was really fun to me, and I've been to a singular drag sale before, and it was a lot of really tacky, gaudy, ugly costumes, but those perform well and they sparkle, and that is what drag queens typically wear. So that was kind of what I was expecting for this challenge, and I think I was a little bit confused on the assignment because they also mentioned a slow-mo runway. So for the first group of outfits that came out, I thought, some of these look really well constructed for a one-day sewing challenge, only for me to realize that it was a secondary costume. I don't think that clicked the first time around, which was honestly probably a listening comprehension on my end. But I also felt like this episode was edited oddly, as we saw happen in Untucked. There were a lot of moments that I felt were spliced together, or big segments of time got chopped out because one conversation didn't quite flow well into the other one, and overall just this episode seemed sloppily edited and put together. In the beginning of the episode, the girls are thinking that Perla won that lip sync over Sanjina, and the internet is really divided on this. Some people think that Sanjina gave it her all and deserved it, and some people think that Perla dog walked her, and the girls in the room obviously are feeling a certain type of way as well, thinking that the back of Perla's head was more interesting than what Sanjina was doing. And in my opinion, I do think that Perla did better in that lip sync. But this sets us up for the overall story, starting with, is Sanjina as good as we're purporting her to be, only for her to go home at the very end of the episode. So on an editing note, it did feel like they were trying to follow a through line of Sanjina was on a high from last week, only to collapse out of the competition this week, which may explain some of those weird editing decisions because they were just following this line that Sanjina was going home. So everything kind of had to focus around her. Even that moment where Xana was talking about, should you be learning things while you're here, you should come into this competition knowing what you're going to do and the challenges that are laid out here. After we had a confessional from Sanjina earlier talking about how she knows that she's supposed to take sewing lessons, it felt like these specific conversations were left in the final edit just to really hammer in that Sanjina did not do a good job at the design portion, which on a television aspect, I like a good storyline. On a character assassination, I didn't love it. It kind of felt like they were really going hard on her. The mini challenge is a glamorous, sexy boudoir photo shoot, and I loved this in comparison to a lot of the other photo shoots we've seen across time and space in the Drag Race zeitgeist. I love that there was so many different visual elements. There were feathers, there was banana splits, there were chocolate covered strawberries. And I loved a lot of the performances that the various contestants gave us, including Uma's kind of wackadoo, I didn't really realize this was happening today scenario that she was constructing with the pit crew. I loved Xana's I Dream of Genie hair. But Sanjina won the mini challenge, which I was kind of surprised about based off the photos they showed us, because I thought there were some that were pretty fierce. But I am glad that she got some of her flowers, got a little bit of money, since this is really her only high mark so far in the season, other than the win last week, which has been so heavily contested. I can't imagine she feels good about it. As we're building up to the main challenge, we see a lot of breakdowns in the workroom with the hot glue gun gals. Michaela is feeling the pressure of her legacy behind her, that Isis would have done so well. But as Brooke mentioned, Kimmy would have just made a bathing suit. So the expectations are huge on both sides. It could either be a flopzilla or it could be the most groundbreaking thing that's ever been seen in the world. And I understand that pressure. There have been a lot of legacy contestants we've seen come through. Look at Vanessa Vanjie, her first time around. She was really feeling the pressure of Alexis being her mom. Kahana Montrese really was feeling that pressure of Coco being her mom. So we've seen this precedent before, and if the girls don't get out of their head and push, they find themselves in bad positions. So I hope that Michaela can pull herself out of whatever's going on up here and understand that she is representing herself. She's not representing Isis, and the judges are not expecting her to represent Isis. I think if this was Drag Race USA, there would be that pressure fully. But I empathize with her feeling frustrated that she's just not living up to what Isis did in her season. And Brooke looked so good this week as usual. I loved this blue puff sleeve, sleek jacket with the little pencil skirt. Aqua's look so good on her, and I love the complimentary hair. Brooke always eats. So we have 2 runway categories, which is a lot, and I don't want to spend a ton of time talking about all of them because there are so many. So let's do some quick reacts to the first one, and I'll spend most of my time talking about the constructed looks. For the slow-mo runway, they just had to walk down and do a slow-mo pose, and then the camera slowed down even further. I love the idea of 2 looks in one. I just don't know if this was necessarily the week to do it. So starting us out, slow-mo couture, not related to Michaela or Isis or Kimmy. We have Minnie Wang doing body positivity. I really loved seeing her actual human body. I wasn't obsessed with this look. I know they really celebrated it, but I wasn't obsessed with it. Helena got high marks for her slow-mo look, but again, I didn't love it. I think there's something to say about deconstructed, distressed clothing. And this actually looked intentional. It didn't look like accidental distressing, like she was walking by a wind machine and it caught it and ripped up her gown as she was walking down the runway, as most distressed clothing can. I just wasn't live life loving this. Sanjina is out next, and I thought she looked really pretty. I wasn't totally obsessed with the skirt and the visible bodysuit underneath. Next out is Michaela, and I love the idea of doing a mermaid, especially after this last big Little Mermaid event. I think the representation of Black people as merfolk is really important and substantial. I did think this looked a little hobbled together, but I think the colors look pretty on her. To me, this looked like the constructed gown, and I'm so sorry. Next out is Xana. I love the movement on this, and I love the stoning on the corset. Xana is that girl. I love taking the slow-mo idea and bringing it almost to lingerie, but like runway lingerie. I could see this walking in Victoria's Secret. This was one of the highest marks for me. Next out is Jaylene, and this was my favorite look of the entire evening. I loved her representing Turtle Island. I love the application of these turtles. I think the color looks beautiful on her. She looks like a wave. And I think that's important for slow-mo where you really want a lot of movement. She gave that to me. Next out is Uma doing this psychotic look. She mentioned she got this around the time that season 1 came out, and she's held on to it every season. And I thought that was a fun story. This is a little rotten, but I love it. The camp, mama, the camp.
What you do is camp.
Next out is Virgo in chartreuse. A little hoochie dress with some silk attached to it. Isn't really the brief to me, but I think she looks pretty. because it does look like it was an afterthought. Next out is Perla in, God, my second favorite look of the night. This old Hollywood sort of Judy Garland in Wizard of Oz meets young ingenue fresh off the bus in Hollywood trying to get her first role. I loved the fabric. It had movement to it. Even the way that the titty flap was moving was beautiful. She looks gorgeous here, the best I've seen her so far. Now, let's get into the constructed looks for fast fashion. We have Minnie Wang coming out in what I think is probably the most accessible for sellable fast fashion. This looks like the type of gaudy bodysuit you would see at a Hamburger Mary's on a Sunday sale at the top of the month. The only thing I wasn't crazy about was the little vampire bang. I didn't love that, but I do love that there's even a cape on the back. She's got this cool mesh detail on the side, which allows for breathability, which is important for something that you're gonna be dancing and performing in. You can really sell that idea, like, look, this has ventilation in it. You won't just be sweating like a pig in a wig. And so I think both color-wise, sparkle-wise, construction-wise, this is a really accessible look, and it's exactly what my brain would go to when I think fast fashion, and especially for sellable fast fashion. I think Minnie was the only one who got it right in this category. Next out is Helena, who had this idea of doing drips, and the more that I look at it, the more that I quite like it. I think it is definitely very safe. This doesn't look like something that would sell very well because it doesn't have a lot of oomph and pizzazz. There is something that is very quick about it. It looks like a Wish costume. And so I think for something sellable, it doesn't look like something that someone would want to buy. Next out is Sangina in 2 pieces of fabric that have been stapled onto her body. I do quite like this coral netty fabric that she found, but I just don't like the construction of it. And she was really trying to sell it, but I wasn't buying it. It's a lovely representation of who she is as a performer, but there's no way that anyone would purchase that. Next out is Michaela Couture in what I think is a great rough draft for a final product. I think the cutouts are interesting and there's a lot of drag queens who would wear that particular silhouette. I think if this were in some type of PVC or latex, that would actually sell, especially in this color with the accessorizations. The open back is a little bit too much. It would definitely need some type of closure to stay on during a performance. But I think what it is quite unique and also quite commercial at the same time. It's got a fun point of view, and it's definitely something a lot of drag queens would wear. And I do quite like the way that she styled it too. That is a big part of fashion. Next out is Xana in what I think is the most couture of this night. This is not fast fashion to me whatsoever. This is not sellable to me. This is something that you would pay a designer for a really cool night, like a punk night. This shiny distressed gunmetal is immaculate, and the use of it and the structure of this going in these sharp jagged lines with all of those safety pins in it, with the red and the boots, it is just yummy. It is such a good look, but it is so outside of the brief. I mentioned at the very beginning of this, what is sellable and what is couture. This is a one-time look. You could maybe perform a Paramore song in this, maybe. But who knows about its structure of being able to move. You'd probably want to be able to flip or get on the ground and do the pouty baby. This doesn't look like an active garment. This is a Drag Race couture runway garment, which is great, and I love that, but it's not the brief. Xana, I know you've been watching a lot of these videos. I stan you, and I think you're such main character energy, and you are goals. I love this. Not for this challenge. Next out is Jaylene Time in a very well constructed garment. I do quite like the netting with this gold net on top of it. It looks really sleek. It looks really old Hollywood. I think it's the same problem that Xana has. It's not sellable to me. This is a, hey bestie, we have a drag bingo night coming up on Friday, and I want to look like the sparkliest drag queen pulling balls out. Can you make me something I can pay you like $225? That's my budget right now. What do you think? Can we work with that? It's beautiful. You wear it. Everyone at the club goes, oh my God, you look great. But I don't think anyone would go to a rack and just pick this up. It's a little dated. It's definitely for a very specific audience. And when you're creating fast fashion that's sellable, you kind of want to reach a base level of age that everyone can get into, whether you're a 19-year-old drag queen or whether you're a 45-year-old drag queen. there is going to be enough of a market in there. I don't see any 18-year-old going to a drag sale and buying this. I don't see a 25-year-old drag queen going to a drag sale and buying this, unless your character is an old lady. I don't see a 30-year-old going and buying this. I see drag vets in their 40s and 50s and 60s going and buying this, which is great, and that is a market that you could market to. But when I think fast fashion sellable garments, I'm thinking of a encapsulating age range of catch-all of almost anybody that could be sold to, you know? And so this is a beautiful garment for a different category. If this was couture, oh, it's up there. Next out is God doing this wild Coachella ant vibe. Okay, so let me talk about the problems. I think the orange basketball net is not it for this look. I think if this was black or white, it could look quite sleek. There is something to say about slutty net. That is very popular right now. The orange and the yellow pop in a kind of not so great jewel tone way, not necessarily for her complexion. And then I think this magenta that is piping, I think it's a little bit too vibrant against it. A lot of great ideas. I, again, don't think this would sell. So I would actually turn the netting, I would cut that into just a regular old crisp crew cut neckline. Then I would do some type of like tube top cami underneath it. I think the sleeves are quite interesting. I would turn that into a vest with the long sleeves on it. And then I think the pants have a lot of interest, especially with the slit on this side, as well as the tie on it. The pants are reading Ross Dress for Less, and everything net-wise to the sleeves are reading Forever 21. They're coming from different markets and they're trying to be sold together. These separates don't work as a complete thought. So a lot of problems that I had with Uma's were fabric choices as well as design choices. I think the idea is there. It feels a lot like Michaela's, a rough draft for something that could have been a lot better. But I do love her vibe, and I love that she stuck to camp, knowing that this is not her forte, but still trying her best. Next out is Virgo. I don't like the fabric choices. I think the plaid is really fun, but I don't like that almost all of the visual interest has been removed to create this quasi corset, which again, I don't think is sellable, because you have to look at this as a complete dress that you could perform in. Who is realistically going to buy each one of these parts and then put them together that way? The quarter skirt that has asymmetry with chains on the other side, that's gonna break off in 1-2 count, you know? You'll get one donkey kick in and that's gonna break. The gloves are really cool. I think that's probably the best part of the garment. You can even see, I think that she's got her own corset underneath it. So there's her own corset that's probably not a part of the garment, plus this one that she's constructed, which is oddly shaped. And again, these are separates that I don't think would sell. So you've got this hard bralette thing that I don't think would sell either, because you have to be able to use separates in multiple different ways. Something that's wearable means you've got versatility on it. So yes, I love the styling, and I think that it's very cool for a completely different runway category. If the inspiration was updated heathers, I think there's something to say that would be pretty high save about this look, but there's just not anything that I think is marketable to, again, a wide range of people. So this was very low for me. On top of the first look being low, this was now the second. It would definitely land it somewhere near the bottom for me. Next out is Perla in what I think is a super fashionable outfit that does not work for fast fashion. This looks cool. Like if we were doing a vampire night or a punk girl night, this would be the winning look in my opinion. It's very Avril Lavigne. It's very 2006 punk scene girl. It's cool. There's not really anything incredibly marketable about this, for the same reason that I thought about Jaylene's. Jaylene's was marketed to a very old audience. Perla is marketing to a younger, mid-30s audience. I could see a lot of 30-somethings seeing this and calling up some designer in their area and saying, oh my god, I saw that you made that for Perla, can you make one for me too? But I don't see this being a sellable garment in the same sense that something like Minnie did. But the bodysuit is very well constructed from what we can see. So in my opinion, I think some of the choices were Not necessarily correct for the tops and the bottoms, but I didn't have too many qualms about who won. We have Helena, Jaylene, and Minnie in the top. And we have Sanjina, Uma, and Michaela in the bottom. Minnie wins the challenge, which I'm so proud of her for getting that win. She's sort of getting some air, and I hope that she continues to have momentum. As we move into Untalk, not only was there this weird editing going on, but there seems to be quite a bit of natural friction happening in this group. There's some static that's buzzing around all of them, as most of the confessionals have been about each other being pissed off with others in the room. Xana being this main character that is just constantly stirring the pot and seeing what comes out of it. Feels like a lot of the contestants are sort of rubbing each other wrong, and I love that dynamic for TV, and I love what it's doing in just the natural chemistry and conversations that are happening among them, because they all seem to be getting tired of each other a little bit early, at least in the competition. I'm sure they're cool now, but in that moment they seem like they're like it's nails on a chalkboard. Minnie decides to save Michaela, which I think I would have done the same thing too. The entire room talks about how they would have saved Sanjina, leaving Uma kind of in the dirt because nobody chose to save her. And that feels kind of bad because Uma, I think, has been doing fairly well. This was obviously a great misstep, but Uma's been doing pretty good the whole competition. But I understand if you get out the comedy girl now, we've got everybody who's not good at comedy, so we don't really have to worry about anyone steamrolling Snatch Game or the next improv because we know those are going to be happening at some point. The lip sync is Contemporary Love by Rev, and we have Sanjina and Uma in the bottom. Sanjina was really harmed by her outfit. It fell apart, it was coming off, and she was holding on to it the whole time. And it's really hard to serve ferocity when you're standing like this trying to not let your nipples pop out on TV. It's really hard to be glamorous and fun and dance when you don't have an outfit because you're just thinking about how you're not supposed to look like that in front of others. And how do you serve when you don't have a functional garment? And that is a big part of wearable fashion. I would have loved nothing more than if they had done some type of mini lip sync situation in these garments to prove that they are wearable and sellable, because a wearable garment would be able to survive a lip sync and stunts. So if they had maybe cut that first runway and made them do some type of tiny 30-second performance to the same RuPaul song, I think that would have shown a little bit more who deserved to be in the bottom. And I think maybe others would have been there since their garments would probably have fallen apart too. I will say Uma managed to serve quite well. She kept up. She did something that you don't see a lot of the comedy girls do. Generally, on both US Drag Race as well as the international franchises, when there's a comedy girl, they have a really hard time not being comedy. They get into a lip sync and their immediate response is to make weird faces, do weird arm movements, be strange and odd. But Uma did what we saw Utica do, which was take my humps and turn it into a completely different style song and not be quirky, silly, haha with it. And I thought that Uma's performance was really strong. I thought she justifiably won. And the girls seem kind of pressed in the back about it. Sanjina is now out, which makes sense to me. I think that she was the weakest in this challenge. But it is sad to me because Sanjina and Uma were my early picks for top 3. Based off the trajectory now, I really don't know what's gonna happen next. I have a feeling that Virgo and Michaela are definitely going very far. And I have a bad feeling that Uma's gonna be out maybe even before Snatch Game. Next week is a 90s style girl group, which I am so excited about. Based on the trailer, Brad looks sexy as hell. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do, but more than anything, I feel like this is well timed for not only Helena, because her whole brand seems to be about the early 2000s, late 90s, but also Virgo's brand is very late 90s as well. And I feel like I could see Minnie doing quite well on this challenge additionally. I think Perla's got a lot of late 90s, early 2000s inspiration as well. So the bulk of this group feels like they're going to perform quite well. I do wonder with the dynamics of the workroom and otherwise starting to feel a little bit tense. I worry what that's going to do for the cohesiveness of groups. I don't know if Jaylene is going to do great. I worry that she might be a little bit like kit and caboodle and not really be able to keep up with everyone. Or at least not in the eyes of the judges, because I thought Kitten did quite well in that challenge last season. But what did y'all think about this episode, and who do you think had the most fashionable, sellable garment? Thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all on the flip.